everyone, it's Leslie Schreiner, and I've got a grooming kind of problem solving session here for you. So this girl, she was in good coat. She's coming into good coat now. I had her out about a month ago and her coat wasn't quite in. And what can happen when you have a coat that starts to come in, especially if it's one that hasn't been rotated very much, is some parts of it start to get long all at the same time. And she's got this lump forming right here in her top line. Let me see if I can make that a little more obvious there. I moved to the side. This hair right here, it's a little subtle. You know, it lays almost flat, but this is a harbinger of problems in terms of maintaining this coat for the next time we're going to be able to show her. It's about the end of the season, so probably it's going to be a month at least before we can get her in the ring. And if I wait a month, this is just going to be a full-blown problem. And I'm going to be like, well, I don't know how to solve that. So here's what we do. The trickiest part when you're rotating the coat or when you've just gotten a dog in a good coat is that it looks good for a while past when you need to be working it. And you need to be working it even when it looks really good, because you need more coat coming in so that in 1 to 2 months, you still have a nice coat instead of, well, now it's blown, it's too long, it's too shaggy, now I gotta start over. And then it might be, you know, late spring or summer before you can get her out again. So here's what you can do to kind of maintain and minimize issues like this. This is a common area for it to start getting a little bushy. So one of the first things that we can do is I do a little light raking with an Andis rake. And as I always say with these Andis rakes, you have to make them dull first so they don't cut the coat. And you do that, I literally dig in the dirt with them. And then I stick it in my dishwasher a dozen times or more to really dull the blades. But what I'm going to do is I want to just lightly pull hair kind of all through this area. So I can start by lightly putting the rake through there. It's not really getting anything. It's got a little undercoat. Maybe I'm going to put a little ear powder there to make it a little grippier for the rake and for me. And it also kind of helps to stand the hair up a little bit so it's easier to see what you want to be raking or pulling. So okay, now it's taken a little bit more out this time. And again, I'm doing it super slow, so I'm not going to be breaking coat. The Andis rakes can break coat, but they don't have to if you have a nice hard coat and you're careful about how you use it. Okay, so it looks like this pulled more undercoat than top coat, so that's interesting. That tells me that maybe part of this issue is an undercoat issue, but I do know that I'm still going to need to be growing some more hair in this spot. So I'm just going to back comb it and raise it up, and I can see that there are some longer hairs, and those are the ones I'm focusing on first. And I'm just taking the tips. Thank you, honey. Pulling the tips of just the longest hair. And then here's the tricky part. You start just making random pulls through the whole thing. Don't overthink it. Just literally just move to a different space every time. Pull up a little bit of hair. And periodically stop, comb it out, and see if the lump is still there. It's less, but it's still there. So rough it back up again and pull and literally I am just grabbing like the black tips of the hair and maybe 5 to 10 hairs per pull. If you pull more than that at one time, you're really increasing your chances of putting a hole in, and you don't want to do that. So when you're first learning, do this slow. I can do it a little faster because I got a lot of muscle memory for this. Okay. I'm gonna comb it down. See if I fixed it. It's getting a little less and a little less all the time. Since I recognized that part of that was an undercoat issue, there's a couple of different tools that I can use. There's a type of stripper that's always been called a butter knife, CP Classic. I never use this for stripping, ever. It's very sharp. It cuts the coat a lot if you try to strip with it. But it's good for carding out undercoat. Carding is the process that we call raking undercoat out. And just lightly pull through the coat, almost but not quite parallel to the dog's body. And that lays it down some more. I recognize that part of the issue is that there's a lump here and there's a little hole right here. That's okay, that'll grow in. But it's important to recognize where the longer hair ends and the shorter hair starts, so you don't get pull happy and then start pulling into where it's short. Okay, so go back to pulling a little at a time. Go back and comb it and check often, especially as you're getting closer to completing fixing the problem. Yeah, still getting there. It's better to check more often and go, oh, no, I can still do more, than to not check very often and then go, oh, where'd that hole come from? Okay, yeah, just about solved it. It still looks a little like there's a lump right here, but again, part of that is because this other hair behind it is extra short. If I puff that up a little longer, a little higher, then you can see that that lump is pretty well disappeared. Now, while I have her on the table, absolutely I want to take the opportunity to pretty much to back comb everywhere and pull any stray long hairs. There may not be many, but every time you do this, you know, you are encouraging, you are getting hair to grow in underneath, and that's going to be your new coat, your color, in 2 to 3 months, depending on the part of the dog and how fast the coat grows. So she's got a very sparse layer of pretty long hair, and so now's a perfect time for me to go over all of that, find all of those that I can. I can use my stone. This is a good time to use an actual pumice stone also for these sparse, longer hairs. You can grab a little more at a time. You can work a little faster. And I just find for these little sparse layers of longer coat that the pumice stone works really good to get them. I'm just gripping it with my thumb, so I've got this whole long area that I can pull. Whenever you're touching up the coat, it's always important, make sure you work this area at the bottom of the skirt, even though that hair often seems like, oh, that's so short, I don't need to work that. but it comes in the slowest. And if you have not been deliberately encouraging more coat to grow in down there, there's going to come a point where all the dog is in coat except for that, and you'll be sad. It won't look as good. So I'm just going to take some time, pull this wispy layer down. Another good place it's important to work the wispy layer is the shoulder. Because the shoulder grows pretty fast, and that's a place where you can really find yourself suddenly with long coat with nothing underneath it. And then when you try to strip it down to show the dog's conformation, then all there is undercoat underneath, and you're sad. Okay. Anytime I have a dog on the table for a little bit of maintenance grooming, I always make sure I do some work on the tail and on the head, because the tail and the head grow the fastest of all. So to keep myself from getting in trouble, and so that I can try to stretch this coat out for another good month or two. She's got a lot of her points. I really don't want to have to let it all grow out and blow and then have to section strip it all over again. I'd really rather just work the coat a little bit every 3 to 4 weeks. 2 is ideal, but she doesn't live with me, so this one, seeing her every 3 or 4 weeks is a little more reasonable. But if I can just do a little bit of work often, then I can keep this coat going for a good long time. Hopefully get her finished. She's pretty close. All right, so I do all the same stuff I've done on this side, on the other side. But I'm also, another place that I'm going to work is the head. Now, if I just look at her head, you know, I mean, it's in show condition right now. It's not too long at all. But again, if I am not regularly pulling the hair, it's going to get too long, and then it's going to be bald or a hole when I finally have to take it all down. So to do the top of the head, and the pumice stone's pretty good for this too, although I could also go back to this stone. The most important places to get are the very top, especially if your dog's got any ridges over the brow. You want to keep that nice and short. The top of the skull is supposed to be flat. And even if you can feel it's not, if you can keep it from looking like it's flat, I mean, if you can keep it from looking like it's bumpy, that's helpful. And then just generally everywhere, pull a little hair all over the head, so you always got some color coming in. They can also get some sparse hair here on the back of the head, the back of the skull. Let me see if I can highlight that for you. Right here. It's pretty fine, so I do want to use a stone to pull that down. Okay. Yeah, that's some fuzzy stuff. Some of that's some old puppy coat. Some of it's some that got broken when we first were pulling down her long coat. The coat on the head is softer and it's easier, it's finer, it's easier to break. So you have to be mindful of that. Okay, now let me take a look at that spot again. Still just a little bit lumpy there. And then we pull a little bit more and a little bit more. And I'm using a really light touch. I'm basically only holding the hair just barely hard enough to pull it out. And that's how come I'm only pulling a few at a time, even though I'm gripping a larger area. So that's a thing that you can practice. Be mindful of, start cultivating a recognition of how hard you're pressing your thumb against the tool. Because in some circumstances you want to press hard and pull a lot of hair firmly, and other times you want to press really lightly and just pull just a little bit of hair at a time, depending on the situation. All right, raise that hole back up. Okay, that's a lot better. If I hadn't done this now, in 2 or 3 weeks, this would still need to happen, but the coat would be a lot longer, so it would be harder to do without putting holes in it, and then it would be more than a month's worth of time for new hair to be growing in there. So the key to rotating the coat is just keep hair growing all the time. Now, also for a maintenance session like this, I'm always going to Dremel the toenails. I will often clipper the face and the rear. Even in a dog who's gotten pretty shaggy, I'll always do some maintenance on the front and the rear so that they always look cared for. Even if they've gotten long and shaggy, nobody will ever wonder if that dog is, is getting regular care, because you'll have nice clipper work front and back. Okay, I hope that's helpful. And if you have any problem solving you'd like to have done, send me a picture and I'll be happy to take a look at it and address it in a Q&A and give you some feedback about what to do with it. All right.